For decades, she remained invisible, present in royal corridors, yet erased from history. But just 1 minute ago, the woman entrusted with Princess Eugenie's earliest memories has broken her silence. What she claims to have witnessed behind palace walls threatens to rewrite everything we thought we knew about the British monarchy. Why did she wait so long? And what truth was powerful enough to keep her quiet until now? She was never meant to be remembered. In the grand machinery of the monarchy, her presence was essential yet unseen, a quiet guardian moving through corridors steeped in centuries of power. Known only to a select few, she stood at the heart of royal life, entrusted with a responsibility both sacred and fragile, the care of a young princess whose innocence glowed against the rigid traditions of the crown. To the world, Princess Eugenie was a symbol of continuity and grace. To her nanny, she was simply a child curious, trusting, and unknowingly surrounded by secrets too heavy for her tender years. Within the palace walls, silence was not merely expected, it was enforced with an unspoken precision. Every step was measured, every word carefully weighed. Staff existed within a hierarchy so absolute that loyalty became both duty and destiny. There were rules that governed not only conduct but memory itself, rules that ensured the monarchy remained untouchable, immaculate, eternal. In this world, the nanny learned quickly that devotion was rewarded with proximity, but curiosity came at a cost. Yet behind her quiet composure lay a watchful presence, one who observed more than she ever intended. She became a silent witness to whispered conversations and guarded exchanges, fleeting moments that flickered at the edges of perception like shadows cast by candlelight. Though she spoke little, she listened intently, her role binding her to discretion even as questions stirred within her. She had pledged her loyalty to the crown, but loyalty, she would learn, was not without its burdens. At the center of it all stood Princess Eugenie, radiant in her innocence, unaware of the silent tensions that rippled through the palace. The nanny watched over her with unwavering devotion, offering comfort and stability amid an environment governed by tradition and scrutiny. Their bond was one of trust, pure, uncomplicated, and deeply human. But even in moments of tenderness, there lingered an unspoken awareness that the child's world was shaped by forces far beyond her understanding. As years passed, subtle signs began to emerge, whispers exchanged behind closed doors, glances that lingered a moment too long, conversations abruptly silenced at her approach. The palace, with all its grandeur, carried an undercurrent of unease. It was a place where history breathed through stone walls, where secrets were not spoken but preserved. And though she tried to remain invisible, the nanny could not ignore the feeling that she stood on the periphery of something far greater and far darker than she had ever imagined. Her silence was not born of indifference, but of necessity. To speak was unthinkable. To question was dangerous. And so she carried her observations like a hidden weight, locked within her conscience as the years slipped quietly by. There were moments when doubt threatened to surface, when the conflict between loyalty and truth pressed heavily upon her heart. Still, she remained steadfast, bound by duty and fear in equal measure. Now, decades later, that silence has finally fractured. The woman who once moved unnoticed through royal corridors has stepped into the light, her voice trembling with the gravity of what she claims to have witnessed. Her decision to speak is not merely an act of revelation, it is an act of reckoning, one that challenges the carefully crafted image of an institution built on tradition, secrecy, and power. The truth she carries is not gentle. It is disruptive, and it threatens to echo far beyond the palace gates. Yet her story does not begin with the revelation itself. To understand the weight of her words, we must return to the moment her journey first began, to the gilded world of privilege and protocol, where innocence met authority, and where a silent witness took her first steps into history. But before her revelations could be understood, we must step back into the gilded world where her story began, inside the palace itself. Beyond the iron gates and immaculate gardens lies a world few have ever seen, a world where innocence meets protocol and every whisper echoes through marble halls. As Princess Eugenie's nanny entered royal service, she believed she was stepping into history. Instead, she found herself at the heart of a hidden drama, watching events unfold that would haunt her for a lifetime. Her journey began long before she crossed the threshold of royal life. Carefully selected from a field of impeccable candidates, She endured a process designed not merely to assess competence, but to test loyalty, discretion, and resilience. Every detail of her past was scrutinized, every reference verified, every silence interpreted. To serve within the royal household was not simply employment, it was initiation into a world where trust was currency and secrecy its highest command. When the final approval came, it arrived without fanfare, as though destiny itself had spoken in hushed tones. Stepping into royal service, she was struck by the profound contrast between public grandeur and private fragility. The monarchy, so often perceived as unshakable, revealed itself to be delicately balanced, sustained by rituals and expectations that allowed no room for error. Behind the polished traditions and immaculate composure existed moments of quiet vulnerability, glimpsed only by those entrusted to remain unseen. It was here, in this hidden world, that she first encountered Princess Eugenie not as a figure of ceremony, but as a child brimming with curiosity and warmth. Through the nanny's eyes, the young princess emerged as both radiant and profoundly human. There were laughter-filled mornings and gentle reassurances whispered at bedtime, moments untouched by the weight of legacy. Their bond grew naturally, built on trust and tenderness, a sanctuary of sincerity within an environment governed by protocol. Yet even as affection flourished, the rigid structure of royal life loomed ever present. Every action was governed by expectation, every routine meticulously orchestrated, and every interaction subtly observed. The nanny quickly learned that within these walls, perfection was not desired, it was demanded. As she navigated her role, she became increasingly aware of the invisible lines that defined palace life. There were hierarchies that shaped conversation, silences that spoke louder than words, and glances exchanged between senior figures that carried unspoken meaning. Beneath the surface of elegance and ceremony lingered a tension she could neither fully understand nor ignore. Whispers faded as she approached. Doors closed gently but deliberately. Conversations shifted in tone, leaving behind fragments of uncertainty that lingered in her thoughts long after they had ended. Despite this undercurrent of unease, her devotion to the young princess remained unwavering. In quiet moments, she offered comfort and stability, shielding Eugenie from the invisible pressures of her lineage. Their connection became a refuge, one defined not by status or tradition, but by compassion and trust. Yet even in these tender exchanges, an unspoken awareness lingered. The child she cared for was destined to inherit not only privilege, but the weight of expectation and the burden of history itself. Gradually, a subtle realization began to take hold. Something beneath the palace's polished fade felt unsettled, as though the very walls carried echoes of truths carefully concealed. There were moments when the atmosphere shifted without explanation, when the air grew heavy with silence and the sense of order faltered ever so slightly. She sensed that she was witnessing fragments of a story never meant to be told, one concealed beneath ceremony, preserved behind tradition, and protected by an institution built on secrecy. Still, she remained loyal, bound by duty and guided by the belief that her purpose was to protect, not to question. Yet as days turned into months, and months into years, the whispers grew harder to dismiss, the silences more deliberate, the tensions more palpable. What began as subtle unease evolved into a quiet certainty that something was deeply amiss, hidden just beyond the reach of understanding. And though she could not yet grasp the full truth, she felt its presence drawing nearer, gathering weight and urgency with each passing day. The splendor of royal life, once dazzling and reassuring, began to feel like a carefully crafted illusion, one that concealed far more than it revealed. Yet it was not the grandeur that lingered in her memory, nor the privilege of proximity to power, but something far darker, etched into her conscience with unrelenting clarity, because it was not the splendor that left the deepest mark on her, but the night she witnessed something no one was ever meant to see. It began as an ordinary evening within the palace, quiet, controlled, predictable. But as darkness settled over the royal residence, the nanny found herself drawn into a moment so unsettling it would remain etched in her memory forever. What she witnessed that night, she claims, was not meant for any outsider's eyes, a revelation that would haunt her conscience and alter her perception of the monarchy forever. The evening had unfolded with the familiar rhythm of royal routine. Protocol dictated every movement, every word, every silence. The young princess had been tucked into bed with gentle reassurance, her innocence untouched by the weight of the world beyond her chamber. For the nanny, it was another night of duty fulfilled, a continuation of the quiet devotion that defined her life within the palace. Yet beneath the surface of calm, something felt different, an unspoken tension that lingered like a shadow just beyond reach. It began subtly. Voices murmured in distant corridors, sharper than usual, laced with urgency. Footsteps echoed where none were expected, measured yet hurried, carrying an air of secrecy that unsettled her. The palace, typically governed by precision and order, seemed to breathe with unease. Conversations ceased abruptly as she approached. Doors closed with deliberate finality. There was no announcement, no explanation, only silence thickened by implication. Drawn by instinct rather than curiosity, she found herself lingering where she did not belong. Her presence unnoticed yet perilously close to something forbidden. What she encountered that night would fracture her certainty forever. Words spoken behind closed doors, words heavy with consequence, revealed a tension among senior figures that defied the flawless image of unity the monarchy presented to the world. Their tones were hushed but strained, their composure carefully maintained yet unmistakably brittle. In that moment, the palace ceased to feel invincible, it felt vulnerable, human, and deeply guarded. Her heart pounded as realization dawned. She had become an unwilling witness, caught between duty and truth. Every instinct urged her to retreat, to forget what she had heard, to remain loyal to the institution that had entrusted her with its most precious charge. Yet the gravity of what unfolded held her captive, imprinting itself upon her conscience with relentless clarity. It was not merely a breach of decorum, it was something far more troubling, something concealed beneath layers of tradition and power. And then, there was the princess. Princess Eugenie's presence lingered at the edge of that night's events. Innocent and unaware, her world illuminated by trust and affection. The nanny's first instinct was to protect her, to shield her from whispers she could not understand, and truths she should never have to bear. In that moment, the bond between them deepened into something unspoken and resolute. Whatever she had witnessed, she vowed silently that the child would remain untouched by its shadow. But the atmosphere shifted further, heavy with foreboding. A glance exchanged between senior figures. A hurried departure. A command delivered in a tone too controlled to be casual. Subtle clues hinted at concealment, as though an invisible hand sought to gather the fragments of that night before they could be seen or remembered. The weight of secrecy pressed in from all sides, leaving her breathless with uncertainty. When the palace finally returned to stillness, the silence felt unnatural, deliberate. Nothing was acknowledged, nothing was explained. Yet everything had changed. The nanny carried the memory like a burden she could neither share nor discard, her thoughts haunted by questions that demanded answers. Had she misunderstood, or had she glimpsed a truth so dangerous that it could never be spoken aloud? In the days that followed, she moved through her duties with practiced composure, but her certainty had been irrevocably shattered. The institution she revered now seemed cloaked in shadows, its perfection revealed as a carefully guarded illusion. Fear and loyalty warred within her, each demanding allegiance, each exacting its price. To speak was unthinkable. To remain silent felt unbearable. And so she endured, her conscience heavy with knowledge that refused to fade. What she had witnessed that night would remain with her an indelible memory, fragile yet unrelenting, shaping every moment that followed. It was a secret too powerful to reveal, too dangerous to ignore, and too haunting to forget. But the palace had its own way of dealing with secrets, and silence was not merely expected, it was enforced. In the royal household, loyalty is not requested, it is demanded. After that fateful night, the nanny claims she was confronted with an unspoken ultimatum: protect the crown or risk everything. As whispers turned into warnings and warnings into silence, she realized that the truth she carried was far more dangerous than she had ever imagined. What price must be paid to keep a royal secret buried? The days that followed were cloaked in an unsettling stillness, as though the palace itself had closed ranks. Nothing was acknowledged, yet everything had changed. The routines remained flawless, the courtesies impeccable. But beneath the polished civility lay a quiet expectation, an understanding that what had been seen must never be spoken. Within the royal household, Discretion was not merely encouraged, it was sacred. Silence was the unspoken oath that bound every servant, every aide, every trusted confidant to the crown's enduring authority. She felt it immediately, not through threats or confrontation, but through implication. Conversations halted when she entered a room. Glances lingered a moment too long, sharp with silent inquiry. There were carefully measured reminders of protocol, delivered with polite precision yet carrying unmistakable weight. No accusation was voiced, no warning explicitly given. And yet the message was clear. Loyalty was not optional. It was the price of belonging, the condition upon which trust and survival depended. As the days turned into weeks, whispers drifted through the corridors like echoes of a secret too powerful to name. Staff moved with renewed caution, their composure impeccable, but their silence profound. It was in these quiet exchanges, in the absence of explanation, that she sensed the true reach of institutional power. The monarchy did not need to demand obedience. Its authority was so absolute that obedience was instinctive. Within its walls, truth was not defined by what was spoken, but by what remained unspoken. For the nanny, the burden became unbearable. She carried the memory of that night like a hidden wound, one that could neither be revealed nor forgotten. Each day she fulfilled her duties with unwavering devotion, offering comfort and stability to the young princess who trusted her completely. Yet beneath her composed exterior, guilt and fear intertwined, tightening their grip with every passing moment. She questioned herself relentlessly. Had she misunderstood what she had witnessed? Or had she glimpsed something that was never meant to be known? Isolation soon followed. Once a trusted presence within the household, she found herself subtly distanced, her world narrowing to the confines of her role. Polite exchanges replaced warmth. Familiar faces grew guarded. There were moments when she felt invisible once more, not by choice but by design, as though silence itself had reshaped her place within the palace. It was a loneliness unlike any she had known, one born not of absence, but of awareness. The emotional toll deepened with time. Torn between her conscience and her duty, she struggled to reconcile the loyalty she had pledged with the truth she could not forget. Her devotion to Princess Eugenie remained steadfast, a source of strength amid uncertainty, yet it also intensified her conflict. To protect the crown was to protect the child's world. To reveal what she knew was to risk shattering it. The choice was impossible, and so she endured, her silence becoming both shield and prison. Subtle reminders of control lingered everywhere, formal correspondence delivered without explanation, quiet acknowledgments that seemed to watch without watching, the ever-present understanding that discretion was absolute. No overt command was necessary. The institution's authority spoke through silence, through tradition, through the quiet certainty that some truths were never meant to surface. In that world, integrity was measured not by revelation, but by restraint. As months turned into years, the memory of that night refused to fade. It followed her like an echo, shaping her thoughts, haunting her conscience, and leaving an indelible mark upon her soul. She remained loyal, steadfast, and silent, but the cost of that silence grew heavier with time, its weight pressing against her spirit with unrelenting force. For even the most carefully guarded secret cannot remain buried forever, and though the palace walls stood strong and unyielding, they could not silence the passage of time or the truth waiting patiently to be heard. Yet even the strongest walls cannot contain the passage of time, and as years went by, the echoes of that night refused to fade. Decades passed, and the world moved on, but for the nanny, time stood still. Haunted by memories she could neither forget nor reveal, she carried the burden of silence through the years. As Princess Eugenie grew into adulthood under the relentless glare of public scrutiny, the woman who once watched over her wrestled with a secret that threatened to consume her. How long can a truth remain hidden before it demands to be heard? Time did what it always does: it softened edges, reshaped reputations, and ushered the monarchy into a new era. The young princess she had once soothed to sleep grew into a poised and confident woman, stepping into the public eye with grace and resilience. The world celebrated her milestones, her charitable endeavors, and her evolving role within the royal family. To the public, she embodied continuity and hope, a symbol of modernity within an institution steeped in tradition. Yet for the woman who had watched her childhood unfold, each headline stirred memories too powerful to silence. With every passing year, the nanny carried her secret in quiet solitude. She had retreated from the corridors of power, her once constant presence replaced by distance and anonymity. Yet anonymity offered no peace. The memory of that night remained vivid, resurfacing in the quietest moments, uninvited and unrelenting. It lingered in her thoughts, etched into her conscience with a clarity that time could not erase. She had believed that silence would grant her absolution, that loyalty would shield her from the weight of what she had witnessed. Instead, it became a burden she could neither share nor escape. As the monarchy evolved in the public imagination, embracing transparency, navigating controversy, and redefining its place in a changing world, her internal conflict deepened. She watched from afar as public narratives shifted, as the crown presented itself as resilient and renewed. Yet beneath the surface of celebration and reinvention, she carried a truth that remained untouched by time. The contrast was unbearable, a world applauding continuity while she grappled with a memory that threatened to fracture the illusion she had sworn to protect. Her sense of responsibility grew with each passing year. She had once believed that silence was an act of loyalty, a shield protecting both the institution and the child she adored. But as Princess Eugenie stepped confidently into adulthood, that belief began to waver. Was silence truly protection, or had it become complicity? The question haunted her, echoing through her thoughts with relentless persistence. She feared that revealing the truth could cast shadows upon the life she had once safeguarded, yet the weight of concealment grew heavier with every passing day. Memories surfaced in fragments, old letters never sent, photographs tucked away in quiet drawers, echoes of distant headlines that stirred emotions she could not ignore. Each reminder carried the same unspoken question: how long could the truth remain buried before it demanded to be heard? Guilt settled deep within her, a quiet but persistent presence that shaped her days and haunted her nights. She had given her loyalty without hesitation, but loyalty, she realized, had come at a cost far greater than she had ever imagined. The years offered perspective but not peace. She witnessed the monarchy weather storms and celebrate triumphs, its image shifting with the tides of public sentiment. Through it all, she remained an unseen observer, bound by a memory that refused to fade. Her silence, once a shield, began to feel like a prison, one constructed not by others, but by her own fear and devotion. The burden she carried had grown too heavy, its weight pressing against her conscience with quiet insistence. Then came the moment that changed everything. A catalyst, unexpected, undeniable, rekindled the memory she had tried so desperately to suppress. It stirred within her a sense of urgency she could no longer ignore, a realization that time itself had become her greatest adversary. Silence, once her refuge, had become unbearable. The truth she carried demanded release, not out of defiance, but out of necessity. And so, as the years converged and the past refused to remain buried, she reached a decision that would alter the course of her life and challenge the narrative she had upheld for so long. Then, without warning, a moment arrived that would change everything, prompting her to finally step forward. After years of silence, the dam finally broke. In a moment that stunned royal watchers and insiders alike, Princess Eugenie's former nanny came forward with a testimony she claims could shake the very foundations of the monarchy. What drove her to speak after decades of secrecy? And why did she choose this precise moment just 1 minute ago to reveal what she witnessed? The decision did not arrive suddenly. It was forged in years of quiet torment. For decades, she had carried her secret like an invisible chain, its weight growing heavier with each passing year. What once felt like loyalty had transformed into a relentless burden, gnawing at her conscience and eroding her peace. The catalyst came quietly, yet with undeniable force, a moment of reflection that stripped away fear and replaced it with resolve. Time had not erased the truth, it had sharpened it. And in that realization, she understood that silence was no longer protection. It was complicity. The world around her had changed. Institutions once shielded by reverence were now scrutinized by a public that demanded transparency and accountability. Voices long silenced were rising, their courage reshaping the boundaries of truth and power. In this shifting landscape, her own silence began to feel like an echo of a bygone era. The monarchy, once perceived as untouchable, now faced questions from a society unwilling to accept mystery without explanation. She saw in this transformation an opportunity not for vengeance, but for redemption. Yet fear remained a constant companion. The crown was not merely an institution. It was an enduring symbol of authority, influence, and legacy. To challenge its narrative was to risk everything. She feared the consequences: ostracism, disbelief, even retaliation, but the desire to unburden her conscience proved stronger than her apprehension. For years she had protected the palace and the child she adored. Now, she believed, truth itself demanded protection. Her courage was not born of defiance, but of necessity, a quiet, unwavering conviction that the past could no longer remain concealed. When her testimony finally emerged, it did so with electrifying force. The revelation spread with astonishing speed, igniting headlines and stirring global fascination. Royal watchers, historians, and commentators alike were left reeling, grappling with the implications of a voice once hidden within the very heart of the monarchy. Her words were measured, deliberate, and unflinching, each one carrying the gravity of lived experience and the weight of decades spent in silence. She did not seek spectacle, she sought truth. Yet truth, when revealed, possesses a power all its own. The reaction was immediate and relentless. Media outlets across the world seized upon her account, amplifying her voice and transforming her story into an international sensation. Public opinion surged with curiosity and disbelief, igniting debates that reverberated far beyond palace walls. For some, her testimony represented courage and moral clarity. For others, it threatened the sanctity of an institution woven into the fabric of history. The contrast was stark, the tension undeniable. In breaking her silence, she had ignited a storm that could not be contained. Within royal circles, the impact was profound. Insiders whispered of unease, of carefully measured responses and guarded deliberations. The revelation disrupted the delicate equilibrium that had long sustained the monarchy's public image, casting shadows upon its carefully cultivated narrative. For the first time in decades, a voice from within its inner sanctum had spoken with unfiltered candor, challenging the perception of invincibility that had endured for generations. Her act of disclosure carried a symbolic power that transcended the details of her testimony. It was a declaration that truth, no matter how deeply buried, possesses the strength to rise. It was an acknowledgement of the human cost of silence and the enduring courage required to confront the past. In speaking out, she reclaimed her voice and, with it, her peace, transforming years of quiet suffering into a moment of profound reckoning. As her words reverberated across the world, the palace faced an unsettling question: how would the monarchy respond? The revelation sent shockwaves across the globe, igniting debates and casting a shadow over the monarchy's carefully guarded image. As headlines erupted and speculation intensified, royal observers and historians scrambled to interpret the implications of the nanny's testimony. Could this be the scandal that reshapes public perception forever, or merely another chapter in the crown's long history of controversy? Within hours, her words spread across continents, amplified by relentless media scrutiny and the insatiable curiosity of a captivated public. News outlets dissected every detail, commentators weighed the implications, and social platforms ignited with fervent debate. Some hailed her courage as an act of moral reckoning, a long overdue challenge to the silence surrounding power. Others questioned her motives, defending the institution she had dared to confront. The world watched, divided yet enthralled, as a once invisible figure reshaped the narrative surrounding one of the most revered monarchies in history. At the heart of the storm lay the crown itself, an institution defined by continuity, tradition, and an unwavering commitment to public trust. For centuries, its survival had depended not only on ceremony but on perception, carefully cultivated and fiercely protected. Now that perception trembled. The nanny's testimony pierced the veneer of infallibility, forcing observers to confront an unsettling question: how fragile was the monarchy's carefully maintained image? In a modern age demanding transparency, even the slightest crack could reverberate with seismic force. Royal commentators and palace insiders responded with measured caution, their words chosen with the precision of diplomacy. Some dismissed the claims as misinterpretation, urging restraint and respect for tradition. Others hinted at unease behind the palace gates, acknowledging the weight of a narrative that could not easily be dismissed. Speculation grew with each passing day, fueled by whispers and guarded statements that revealed little yet suggested much. The silence of the palace spoke volumes, leaving the public to fill the void with questions that refused to fade. Amid the swelling controversy, attention inevitably turned to Princess Eugenie herself. No longer the innocent child at the center of a hidden world, she stood as a poised and accomplished woman. Her life lived under the relentless glare of public scrutiny. The revelation cast an unwelcome shadow over her image, intertwining her personal history with a narrative she had neither authored nor invited. For some, sympathy surged, recognizing the burden of legacy she carried. For others, curiosity deepened, drawing her into a story that blurred the boundaries between past and present, innocence and implication. History offered unsettling parallels. The monarchy had weathered storms before, moments of scandal and controversy that threatened its standing yet ultimately reshaped its identity. Each crisis had tested the crown's resilience, forcing it to adapt while preserving the illusion of continuity. Now, as comparisons emerged and memories resurfaced, observers questioned whether this revelation would follow the same path or mark a turning point unlike any before. The past loomed heavily, reminding the world that the monarchy's greatest strength had always been its ability to endure. In this unfolding drama, narrative itself became a battlefield. Truth and perception collided, each vying for dominance in the court of public opinion. The nanny's voice, once silenced by loyalty and fear, now carried the power to redefine legacy, to challenge tradition, and to reshape how history would remember the crown. Her testimony was more than a story, it was a catalyst, igniting a conversation that transcended the palace walls and echoed across generations. As anticipation intensified, the tension between tradition and accountability reached a fever pitch. Would the monarchy confront the revelation with transparency, or retreat behind the shield of protocol and silence? The question lingered, unanswered yet unavoidable, as the world awaited the crown's response. With every passing moment, the stakes grew higher, the consequences more profound, and the truth more elusive. Yet beneath the headlines and speculation lies a deeper, more personal story, one that speaks not only of power, but of innocence and legacy. In the end, the story is not merely about scandal, it is about truth, memory, and the enduring weight of the crown. As Princess Eugenie's former nanny steps out of the shadows, her voice challenges us to reconsider the cost of silence and the fragility of legacy. What she witnessed may never be fully understood, but its echoes will linger, reshaping how history remembers the monarchy forever. Her testimony did more than disrupt a narrative. It illuminated the profound human cost of secrecy within one of the world's most powerful institutions. For decades, silence had served as both shield and prison, protecting tradition while imprisoning those bound by loyalty. Behind the grandeur of royal legacy stood individuals whose lives were shaped by discretion, their truths buried beneath centuries of ritual and reverence. In breaking her silence, the nanny revealed not only a hidden memory but the quiet suffering endured by those entrusted to guard the crown's image at any cost. Her courage was neither theatrical nor triumphant. It was deeply human, an act of reckoning born from years of reflection, fear, and unwavering conscience. She did not speak out of bitterness, but out of necessity, seeking peace after a lifetime of quiet turmoil. In reclaiming her voice, she confronted the moral weight she had carried for decades, transforming silence into testimony and secrecy into truth. Her story stands as a reminder that even within the most impenetrable institutions, the human spirit endures, compelled by an unrelenting desire for honesty and redemption. At the center of this unfolding narrative remains Princess Eugenie, once a child shielded from the complexities of royal life, now a woman navigating her legacy beneath the world's watchful gaze. Her innocence, untouched by the shadows surrounding her past, endures as a symbol of resilience and dignity. She represents a generation poised between tradition and transformation, embodying both continuity and change. The revelations, however unsettling, do not diminish her humanity. Instead, they illuminate the fragile balance between public expectation and personal truth that defines life within the monarchy. The crown itself stands at a crossroads, its legacy shaped not only by ceremony and tradition but by the narratives that surround it. For centuries, its strength has rested upon perception, an intricate tapestry woven from history, loyalty, and belief. yet perception is fragile, vulnerable to the voices that rise from within. The nanny's testimony underscores the delicate equilibrium between tradition and transparency, forcing a reckoning with the evolving demands of a modern world that no longer accepts silence as virtue. In this tension lies the monarchy's greatest challenge: to preserve its heritage while embracing the truths that define its future. History is not immutable; it is shaped by those who dare to speak. A single voice, once dismissed as insignificant, now resonates with the power to redefine legacy and reshape collective memory. The nanny's words have etched themselves into the broader narrative of the crown, reminding us that truth, however long suppressed, possesses a quiet inevitability. Her testimony stands as a testament to the enduring influence of personal courage, proving that even the most guarded institutions cannot remain untouched by the passage of time or the persistence of conscience. And yet, as this chapter draws to a close, an unsettling ambiguity remains. Not every question has been answered. Not every shadow has been illuminated. The corridors of history are vast, and within them linger stories yet untold, truths preserved by silence and safeguarded by tradition. The monarchy endures, its gates closing once more upon a legacy both revered and questioned, its image sustained by ceremony yet haunted by the whispers of memory. What remains is not certainty, but reflection, a recognition that power and secrecy have always walked hand in hand, and that the cost of silence is borne not only by institutions, but by the individuals who serve them. The nanny's voice, once hidden in obscurity, now echoes through history as a symbol of courage and reckoning, a reminder that truth, no matter how fragile, possesses the power to endure. And as the palace gates close once more, one question lingers in the shadows: what other secrets remain unseen behind the crown?